again, you have Ethiopia, 100 million, people. Yes, they have a different type of democracy, but obviously it's not the one that people actually go to the, right? So if you were to, give advice on, the things that are not working in Somalia with the experience that you have on both sides of the border, if I may say so, what do you think? What would you actually tell, Somalia to actually replicate from what Somalilanders have done in terms of democracy and institutional building?
There are two main things that I have consistently emphasized to Mogadishu authorities, including face to face to the president. One is define the federal government of Somalia, define your federalism. It is very vague in the Constitution, provisional Constitution. It was left vague on purpose because they thought through negotiations it would end up getting defined. And they were expecting you all to be at the table. But the fact that roles and responsibilities between the center and the states, between the central government and the state governments, is not defined. And in practice, it's done in an arbitrary, politicized way as far as distribution of funds and so forth, and often using political tricks to get a state president who is unpopular in the state, and the people had nothing really to say about it. So there's that is a lot of the political instability is due to inability to define what their federalism is. I got a lot of highly negative messages from Somalia citizens who are committed to the unitary state of idea of Siad Barre, even though that ended in utter catastrophe. And they didn't like me mentioning federalism.
On the side of Somaliland with an actual genocide that is on the books.
Right, and I hope you recognize that I referenced that in the article. So, anyways, that is the top thing, and then taking attention away from the war against Al-Shabaab and on behalf of those who are living under the terrible misrule of that death cult. Those are the two main things. So as far as what Somaliland has achieved, you have an administration and you have some civil liberties. I do ding you on freedom of expression, but because people who don't share the majority view as regards independence are arrested and locked up, and that's just.
Can I slip in a question in there, because again, I'm a journalist, and I certainly get in trouble at times, right? And again, my view on that is not that the government actually has a concerted sort of effort, had a meeting and said, let's crack down on media, but stuff happens, right? And again, this is the job, right? You're not gonna please everybody, and obviously, if you're critical of somebody, sometimes like there's some friction. But again, you really do, you have talked about that, and I want to kind of just push you a little bit and see what your, I mean, obviously in a lot of, indexes that measure civil liberties and freedom of speech, I mean, Somaliland actually ranks much higher, again, than many other countries in the region, including Djibouti. Now, obviously, again, the goal is not to compare yourself to somebody who's, right? Obviously, it's to do better. But your critical stance, is it because you hold Somaliland to a higher, standard because of what it has actually achieved?
It's more for a practical reason. I would, again, it's the process. I would like there to be a settlement of this issue that has gone on for far too long. And one of the options I rejected is status quo. So that's gone on for far too long. It needs to get resolved. And for that, there needs to be open, free discussion.
Now, I want to clarify something. Now, are you speaking of like a journalist who's critical of the government, or are you actually speaking of, somebody who is, possibly, and I'm going to use a perfect example here. Somebody who's wearing the Somalia flag in the streets of Hargeisa. Again, I want to, obviously, freedom of speech is freedom of speech. And, there's no limits to it, especially if, we're speaking of democracy, right? Especially those are the dissenting views that, want to remain with Somalia, right? But, we want to be careful how we define these things because, again, there are traumatic things that went on in Somalia. And there's a lot of people that actually may, view that flag as something, completely unconscionable. Now, sometimes, and again, I'm not saying that's why the government does it. Is it to antagonize? Is it, right? So we got to be careful how we really define that. But obviously, people should feel free, expressing their opinion, no matter how divergent. And I would agree with you on that. But again, I'll bring you back to, a lot of things that really happen in Mogadishu in the sense that, freedom of speech, civil liberties. I mean, they're, basically scoring near zero on many of these things.
I was very vocal about the arrests of some journalists for no good reason. I spoke out loudly and often on that issue when I was in Mogadishu. And that's a matter of public record. That's easy to find. And I did it in video and on interviews and so forth. I again congratulate what Somaliland has achieved, and relative to the rest of the region, I see the point you're making, and I've said that myself. But I do find. Let me ask you a question: if a Somalilander who wants union with the rest of Somalia with full autonomy, something like what Puntland has. Puntland is pretty autonomous, or something like Zanzibar in Tanzania. And that is their opinion. And they have a lot of practical reasons why they think that's the best move. Could they write an opinion piece and get it printed in your media?
100%. In fact,
I know of cases of people getting arrested just for speaking their mind on that.
So a couple of things, right? Obviously, what the government does, and in terms of, basically people sort of losing their civil liberties, because of expressing an opinion. That's a separate thing than what we actually believe as an outlet. And again, this is why we're having this incredibly open discussion and actually try to understand, your point of view and, to the rest of Somalilanders, some of whom actually contributed lots of questions. And again, it's going much better than I anticipated because I'm not good at